Hey, I'm Jamie from Stonemaier Games, and today I'm going to talk about new editions of games, specifically my top 10 favorite new editions of games. So this, just to be clear about what this list is, this isn't a list about reskins. It's not a game about it's not a list about sequels or deluxe or collector's versions of games. This is new editions in this context are simply the original game, but updated in meaningful ways. That is the definition for this list. I actually do have a previous video about kind of sequels and remakes, and there's a little bit of overlap between this list and that list. That list was around 3 years ago, but this list is very specifically about new editions of games. I did a blog post recently, also a link in the description below, about the idea of new editions and the types of things that a publisher might think about when considering a new edition. And also kind of the ways that you can really serve your customers well when making a new edition, if you are going to consider doing that. Before I jump into the list, I do have a short list of some examples of the types of things that publishers might do in new editions, with a few quick examples. One, they might improve the graphic design, iconology, and or art. You can see this in Seven Wonders, Ra, and Summoner Wars. They might upgrade the components. Some, technology for making components and cost have changed over time. So upgrade components like in Agricola and Camel Up. A publisher might try to increase the replayability and enhance the mechanisms in the game because, we learn things about game design over time. We might revisit an older game. You can see this in Libertalia, Winds of Galecrest, Glen More II, Santa's Workshop, and Sheriff of Nottingham. You might improve the rules, the setup, and the accessibility of the game, like in Eclipse and Twilight Imperium. A publisher might improve or rebalance or redesign the balance of the game, especially if the game has asymmetry. You might learn all the data from all the data that you have about the asymmetry. You might improve the asymmetry, like in Ashes Reborn, Betrayal, A House on the Hill, Dominion, and Through the Ages. You might add new modes of play. So sometimes you have expansions that become essential expansions, and maybe they don't cost that much more to add to the core game. So you can add those new modes of play, or just add different modes of play, like in Descent and Mansions of Madness. And last, we're evolving as humans all the time, and we might look back and see, oh, okay, I could have done things differently than I did 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I think it's good for us to give ourselves room to grow and evolve and improve, and the room for others to do the same. And so culturally inclusive updates, things to make the game more culturally inclusive, kind of ties to accessibility as well, like in Great Western Trail and Zombicide are games that have new editions that do this. So these are some of the reasons that you might consider making a new edition. And I think oftentimes the best new editions have a combination of at least 3 of these things. They really do pay attention. They're not just reprinting the game with a different box or slapping second edition on it. They're putting a lot of time and effort into making the game significantly better. I think that's out of respect for the people, the newcomers to the game, and to those who already invested in the game. Because if you just make a tiny, slight difference, you probably could have done a little upgrade pack. So yeah, new editions. Oftentimes, I'm talking about second editions here, but sometimes it's just new editions of the game. Some Stonemaier games that have new editions are Libertalia, Winds of Galecrest, Viticulture Essential Edition. That's been the Essential Edition of the game for 9 years now. And then Between Two Cities Essential Edition, which is when we essentially just combined the expansion with the core game of Between Two Cities. We did change a few other little things, a little bit of the art, but essentially it was just a combination of the two things. So let's get to the top 10 here. And I made a fairly last minute change to the list, so I'm going to shift things around a little bit. Let's start with number 10. Number 10 is Mansions of Madness. So Mansions of Madness second edition. So for a few of the games on this list, I have not played the first edition. So this isn't necessarily a comparison to the previous game. It's also just my appreciation of the game, the way it currently is, the way that I know it. And Mansions of Madness second edition is I kind of want to say dungeon crawl game, but I think it goes a little above and beyond dungeon crawl games. A lot of dungeon crawl games are just go in, fight the monsters. But there's a lot of other things to do in Mansions of Madness. You're trying to solve a mystery often and figure out the best way to solve that mystery. And the game is accompanied by an app that makes that much easier, I think, than than the previous version, which did not have an app, as far as I know. Namely, in terms of tracking stats. So there are certain stats that you need to track in the game. Like if you do a little bit of damage to someone or you make a little bit of progress on something, the app remembers that instead of you having to remember that. The app tells you which rooms to place out. So they show you on the screen here which rooms you need to place out and where you need to place them. It has the visual of that. You could do that with a rulebook, but the app does that really well. And probably most crucially, there are puzzles in the game, like little polyomino puzzles, sliding puzzles, things like that. The app lets you do those puzzles on the app itself rather than having to find all those pieces and put together the puzzle and then solve the puzzle as well. It can lead to a lot of extra steps. I think the app makes that a lot more streamlined. But overall, also, the app adds good music. So there's nice thematic music when you're playing Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition. So the app does a lot. The app is the main, I think, addition to this new version of the game, the 2nd edition of Mansions of Madness. And it is number 10 on my list today. That's Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition. At number 9 is Seven Wonders. This is, I want to say this is partially kind of a more subtle change to the original Seven Wonders game, because as far as I can tell, there are very few mechanisms that have changed in this version. Maybe a few little things about the wonders, a few little things here and there about the cards, but for the most part, this is a visual and graphic design refresh of the game. You can see it in the card backs. The card backs are very clear. It shows you which way to draft. And these card backs are on the original version, but I think they look better. They're a little bit clearer in this new version, the card backs. In a game like this where you have 3 different eras, 3 different types of cards, you need it to be very easy to differentiate one card back from another. You can see the art is different. The graphic design has subtle differences that I do think make it just a little bit easier to play and understand and explain the game and to look at it on the table. It's pretty subtle. Mostly this game is on the list not because of the comparison to the previous version, but because I really love Seven Wonders. I'm almost always happy to play Seven Wonders. I think it's a game that works really well with a wide variety of people, a wide variety of numbers of people. It scales really well up to higher player counts. And yeah, it's just a game that I really enjoy. So Seven Wonders, the new edition of Seven Wonders, I really enjoyed this game. At number 8 on the list is Glen More II. Now, this is a significant difference. I won't go into all the differences between this and the original version. This is the version that I have played the most, but I have played both versions of Glen More. And this version just adds a lot of great stuff to the game. In Glen More, you are using a one-way action selection track to choose a tile. You can jump as far ahead on this little track as you want to claim a tile, and then you add that tile to your tableau and activate the ability on that tile and all potentially 8 tiles surrounding that tile. So it's a game that gives you a lot of stuff. It's very rewarding, very full of combos in terms of where you place the tiles. Feels really good when you place the tile in this game. It also adds this whole other board that isn't in the original edition at all. That is this, it's this other puzzle of moving a token or expanding a token, expanding your influence around different areas on this board to gain one-time bonuses. It's a pretty big addition to the game. I'm not sure if I entirely need it, but it's the only way that I played Glen More II, and it is really satisfying to play with that. All of this alone would be plenty of game that I could play many, many different times. But Glen More II Chronicles also adds a bunch of different modes of play. So you can add a bunch of these little modules to the game and explore these modules in a story format if you want, or you can just find your favorite one and add it into the game in any order. I think that's neat to add to the game as well. I haven't even made it through all the Chronicles because I found some that I like and want to play with more often. But yeah, Glen More II Chronicles is a really wonderful game that combines a few of my favorite mechanisms. And it's a really, really big refresh compared to the original version of the game. So that's Glen More II Chronicles at number 8. At number 7 is the game Camel Up, or Camel Cup, depending on how you want to say it. This is a game about racing camels. You're betting on camels. So you are not a camel. You're betting on different camels to do certain things, to finish in first, to finish in last. You can, on your turn, you can move a camel forward by using this big plastic pyramid to shake one of these dice out onto the table to see which camel moves and how far it moves. There are a lot of little differences in Camel Up, the 2nd edition. One part of it's aesthetic and part of it's functional. So like this pyramid is plastic compared to the cardboard version in the original, which fell apart pretty easily. This is more durable. It has this pop-up nature to the board where when you open the board, things like this pop up like a pop-up book, which is really satisfying. I think it's a really clever addition to the game. The dice are new. It adds some modules that were previously in, I think, either in expansions or promos for the game, like letting camels. I think there are 2 camels that aren't even in the original core game that add a lot of replayability. These camels can move backwards and kind of throw off the strategy a lot. So they learned, I think, from after the original release, they learned some of the things that people really, really enjoyed, and they combined them into one really satisfying, really colorful new edition of Camel Up. This has been the edition of the game for quite some time now. So yeah, Camel Up or Camel Cup 2nd edition. This is my number 7 pick on this list. Number 6 on the list is a game that I can't compare to the original edition. I have not played The King is Dead 1st edition, but I really love The King is Dead 2nd edition. It is such a streamlined game, but with so much depth of play, in my opinion. It is an area control game, but in this game, you only have a very limited number of cards to play. I think it's like 12 or 14 cards. Every player has the same exact number of cards, and on your turn, you're choosing to either play one of those cards or pass out of the round. And you never gain the cards back. Those are all of your actions for the entire game. There's no randomness except for some randomness with the setup, but you get to see your cards from the very beginning for the entire game. I think the randomness is oftentimes like the order in which you're activating these different provinces. But I love how tight this game is. I love that you know all of your actions for the entire game, and you have to decide when to play them. I think the game looks great. Like, this aesthetic is right up my alley for this type of game. I think that the graphic design of the cards makes the cards really easy to explain, even without text on the cards. I think the game just shines. I think it is a really, really wonderful, streamlined game with a lot of depth, despite how streamlined the game is, and that is The King is Dead 2nd edition. But again, I can't compare to the first. I just know that I really like the game in its current form. And number 5, I did include one of our games on the list because I know how much love and time and effort we put into Libertalia Winds of Galecrest. This is everything I want a 2nd edition of a game to be. It refreshes the art, it refreshes the graphic design, it adds a board to the game to make it. Well, the original kind of had a board, but it wasn't as usable as I think the new board is. It adds a new reputation. It adds a new tiebreaker in the form of reputation. It adds 10 new character cards. So instead of each player having 30 character cards, you have 40 character cards. It adds a solo mode. It adds an enhanced 2-player mode in the game. Very easy to implement 2-player mode, because one of the things about Libertalia was 2 players could be a little clunky. The game wasn't played all that much with 2 players. Full refresh of all the components. It adds these big chunky tiles as the loot tiles. It's I don't know. I can't go into all the things, but it changes a lot about the core game for the better. I got to work with the designer Paolo Mori on this game. Paolo spent a lot of time revisiting the game, looking back at what he could have done differently or better and improving that. And we looked at comments on Board Game Geek. I added my own opinions about the game because I love the original game, but I wanted to make it even better. Yeah, I think this really is. I had to put it on this list because I know that, like, all those categories I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this one is all of those categories. It encapsulates every single one of those categories into a new edition. I really do love Libertalia Winds of Galecrest, and I'm genuinely happy to get to the table at any time. It scales really, really well up to 6 players. When I haven't even explained what the game is, if you don't know what the game is, it is a pirate-themed game where you have the same hand of cards as all other players, and you are choosing one of those cards, one of those pirates, to play onto the island to hopefully gather some loot. And you activate these cards from left to right, depending on you order the cards based on their number. So lower number cards are on the left, higher number cards are on the right. Each of you has one card on the island. You activate one of those cards from left to right, or you activate a certain ability on those cards from left to right, and then you gather loot and activate a different ability from right to left. And then all the cards that remain in your ship after that, because you pull your character back to your ship if all goes well, you activate certain abilities on those cards. And then at the end of 3 rounds, each round, you activate the anchor abilities on those cards. And then all those cards get wiped away. They go away. And you start over fresh, and you get to carry over cards that you didn't use in the previous round to the new round. And then all players get the same cards added to that hand. They get 6 new cards, but all players get those same cards. So you're dealing with the exact same information, completely open, really perfect information, except for not knowing what card other players are going to play. But yeah, it's simultaneous play. Yeah, I really love Libertalia Winds of Galecrest, as you can probably tell at this point. So that's my number 5 on this list. And number 4 is Downforce. Downforce is a game that I have not played the original version of this game, but restoration games, this is what they do. They take older games, they refresh them, they learn from the previous mechanisms in those games, and they refresh the games and make them even better. And Downforce, I think, is my favorite of those games. In Downforce, you are choosing a card from your hand, and you're moving all the cars. So you can see all these different cards. You're moving all the cars in that order based on the card you played. So if I played this card right here that has a green 6, I'll move the green card forward 6 spaces if possible. Then I will move the red card forward 4 spaces, then the white card 2, then the black card 1. And so I love that you are constantly looking at where every other card is on the track. You are sometimes helping other players based on just because you have to, because you can't choose not to move a card, or because you have bet on that card. You actually want someone else's card to do well. And sometimes you're choosing cards like this. Like I might have bets on the red card. I might have bought the red card. So I really want the red card to do well. And so I might choose to play this card at a time that the 6 card, the green 6, is blocked behind 2 cards and can't move. So I'm trying to choose special times to play this card. This isn't the best photo of the game. There's some much cooler photos like this of the cars actually racing around. But the heart of the game is in this card play, and also which cars you choose to bet on with those cards. So yeah, Downforce, my favorite racing game, hands down. I love Downforce. It is my number 4 favorite new edition of a game. And number 3 is Dune Imperium Uprising. I almost didn't include this game on the list because it does feel a little bit like a sequel to Dune Imperium, but it also is just a new edition of Dune Imperium. It is very similar in terms of components. It has the same core gameplay. It has the board is very similar. There are subtle differences, important differences in the board, but it is the same worker placement / deck building game as the original game. I played this 3 times so far. I just happened to play it a couple days ago before filming this video, and I was reminded of how much I love this game. I love Dune Imperium. I love that you are playing a card, and that card shows you where you were allowed to place a worker on the board, and also it might give you a special benefit as you are playing that worker. But the cards that you don't play remain in your hand, and at the end of the round, you get to use those to either buy new cards. That's the point in time when you acquire new cards, or to participate in the combat. And so there's always this tension of which combat do I participate in? Do I try to get into to gain the benefits? Every combat gives you different benefits for finishing first, second, or third. Versus which cards do I want to add to my deck? Versus where do I really need to place a worker right now? Because you only need to get 10 points to win this game. You can get a few more points than that, but it is a 10-point game. So every point matters. Yeah, so much great tension to this game about every single decision that you make. How will it move me forward? How does it impact the other players? And when do I do the things that I need to do? And it's fully, richly immersed in the theme of Dune. So yeah, I love this game. Dune Imperium Uprising is probably the longest game on this list. But arguably also a sequel, not just a new edition of the game, but I do think it falls into the category of new edition for Dune Imperium, and that is Dune Imperium Uprising at number 3. And number 2 is the game that I have on my shelf, Ra from 25th Century Games. This game has gone through multiple iterations. Ra has. This is a push your luck auction game with great set collection elements. Set collection in 2 ways. Set collection that is wiped clear at the end of the round, and also set collection of some tiles that you accumulate over the course of the entire game. I really love the balance between those 2 things. And the new version of the game, I mentioned this in my graphic design video recently too, the new version of the game separates those 2 different types of tiles through your player mat, which explains how the tiles work. So on your player mat, you have tiles that are kept throughout the game permanently on the left side, and then tiles that score and are wiped at the end of each round on the right side. That's one of the things that this new edition does. The new edition has completely new visuals, completely new graphic design. I think the mechanisms are almost identical. There might be a few subtle differences, but for the most part, this is a graphic design visual refresh, and an impactful one at that. But yeah, as much as I love that, I also just love the bidding system in the game, where you are not bidding with money. You're bidding with these big chunky tokens here. This player has the 5, the 10, the 4, the 9 has already been spent over here. So you're bidding that tile to try to win the auction of tiles that are currently out here. And this is a big auction right here. You can see all these tiles are up for auction. So if I won this auction, I would win all of these tiles and this bidding token. And then once I have won 3 auctions in the course of a round, I can no longer bid on anything. I'm just waiting for the round to end at that point. But yeah, I love this auction system of only having a few tiles, a few tokens to actually bid with. You're not accumulating something to bid with. You just have these tokens. And you can also win, or you do win, a token in the auction itself that impacts the tokens that you have for the following round. Great auction system. A little bit of push your luck with deciding, okay, do I want to go pursue an auction now or wait until it gets a little bit better? Because you might run out of time in the round, or you might start to get bad tiles in that auction that you don't want in the auction. So it adds this little push your luck element too. I love Ra, and this new edition of Ra is really beautiful. I'm happy to have it on my shelf. This is Ra as my number 2 pick. It is only eclipsed by Santa's Workshop, a game that is still fairly new to me. I played this for the first time at Christmas this past year, around 6 months ago, but I really love Santa's Workshop. I love worker placement in general. Santa's Workshop is a game about preparing for Christmas. You're Santa's elves working in the workshop to put together blueprints, to make toys, and to do a bunch of little mini games that are on the board. Let's see if we can see some more of those mini games. Yeah, there's a bunch of the mini games here on one side of the board. There's goal completion. There's some set collection. There's you're filling up this Christmas tree with these little tokens. It is a very rewarding game with a lot of positive player interaction, and it has 2 modes in the game. I think the original game didn't have both modes. This game has a family-friendly mode where all player mats are the same, and it has a more advanced mode on the other side of the game board, where the game board itself is different and the player mats are flipped to asymmetric sides with little puzzles to solve on your asymmetric player mat. I mean, and really, it's not so much about the asymmetry; it's about various puzzles to solve on the player mat, different things to do, different ways to level up, more engine building, really, in the more advanced game. But I really like the option between the two. I've played both versions, and I enjoyed the family version for kind of a low-key Christmas Day game where you don't want to think all that much. And the advanced version is great too when you have more experienced gamers who want something a little bit heavier. This is a game that I will always keep on my shelf. I will always bring out in the holiday season. It really has this warm feel to it. I think the art of it is really beautiful. And I love the 2 modes of play. I love the positive player interaction. It has so much positive player interaction. Again, I can't compare it to the original. I did not play the original, but I think the key thing is the original had different visuals, had some different mechanisms, and didn't have the 2 modes of play. And so I think that the new version really, really shines with those additions. That is Santa's Workshop as my number 1 new edition of the game, a game that I would highly, highly recommend. So yeah, those are my picks for favorite new editions of games. I would love to hear some of your picks for this category. Yeah, I'm sure lots of different games fall into this category because we've seen a lot of games come out with new editions. Again, I'm not talking about reskins. I'm not talking about sequels. I'm not talking about deluxe or collector's editions. I'm just talking about second editions and new editions of games. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below about your favorites. Thanks.